Well, a very good morning. We have a new Health Secretary, Sajid Javid. Matt Hancock finally announced his resignation after 2 days of being front-page news for that video of him kissing a colleague.
I've been to see the Prime Minister to resign as Secretary of State for Health and Social Care. I understand the enormous sacrifices that everybody in this country has made, that you have made, and those of us who make these rules have got to stick by them, and that's why I've got to resign. I want to thank people for their incredible sacrifices and what they've done. Everybody working in the NHS, across social care, everyone involved in the vaccine programme, and frankly everybody in this country who has risen to the challenges that we've seen over this past 18 months. I'm very proud of what we've done to protect the NHS at the peak, to deliver that vaccine rollout, one of the fastest in the world, and I look forward to supporting the government and the Prime Minister from the backbenches to make sure that we can get out of this pandemic. We're so close to the end, and then build back better so that this country can fulfill its potential, which is so great. And I will do that with all of my heart.
Strange little video in some ways. You were suggesting it's kind of strange that he did the video in the first place.
A written statement, maybe? I mean, how sincere was that message? And very bizarre, in his garden, in front of the tree, it's windy, it's kind of slightly difficult to hear him. I just thought it was an unusual way to make that announcement.
I think it's a sign, he clearly feels that he has to be media savvy and just, not just sending those letters, but he feels that he needs to talk to us. Well, we also heard, of course, from the opposition yesterday. Labour's Shadow Health Secretary Jonathan Ashworth told Neil Oliver on GBNews that Boris Johnson should have sacked Matt Hancock instead of letting him fall on his swords.
Hancock he's done the right thing for himself, but more importantly for the country and the National Health Service. And although my dealings with Matt Hancock, he's always been personally extremely courteous with me, and on a personal level, I send him my best for the situation he finds himself in. But to be frank, given what happened, Boris Johnson really should have sacked him yesterday, and I think it shows a lack of judgment, a lack of guts, a lack of spine on Boris Johnson's part that he didn't act yesterday to sack Matt Hancock. In a pandemic where we need people to adhere to the rules, we cannot have the number one rule maker, the man who writes the rules in the Department of Health, breaking them in the way that he did. There's other failings about Matt Hancock's tenure as the Health Secretary. He failed to protect care homes with tragic consequences. He sent our NHS staff to the front line without PPE to face a ferocious, deadly disease. So there's been a whole host of failures these last 12 months or so, but Boris Johnson should have acted sooner. And the fact that he didn't, I think, speaks volumes about his lack of leadership.
Well, Hancock's replacement is no stranger to the Cabinet table. Sajid Javid has been Chancellor, Home Secretary, Housing Secretary, Business Secretary and Culture Secretary over the last 6-7 years or so. Quite the CV, but is he the right man for health? And how will his appointment affect the proposed easing of the lockdown restrictions on July 19th? And that's the really interesting part, because we know that Matt Hancock has been one of the so-called doves within the Cabinet, who's been a strong advocate for continuing the restrictions. You get the sense that Sajid Javid might tilt the kind of government away from that position somewhat, which could have a real, genuine impact, of course, on our lives.
Well, Dominic Cummings, the Prime Minister's former aide, has repeatedly slated Matt Hancock. Judging by his tweet last night, he's not too thrilled, though, by his replacement either. Let's have a look. He said, "So if Carrie appoints Saj, MB, if I hadn't tricked the PM into firing him, we'd have had His Majesty's Treasury with useless Secretary of State, SPADs, no furlough scheme, total chaos, instead of a joint number 10-11 team, which was a big success. Saj, bog standard, chasing headlines and failing, equals awful for the NHS. Need a regime change."
The extraordinary thing about that is that it's suggesting he tricked the Prime Minister into making his own Chancellor resign. Extraordinary stuff.